understanding today, how do you make a settling gas? You start out with limestone, calcium carbonate. You cook it to 2,000 degrees Celsius, and it's not calcium carbonate anymore. Now it's calcium carbide, because you cooked it. And now all you do is add water, and you get a settling gas. It's that simple. Cook limestone to 2,000 degrees, add water, you get a settling gas. For a period of time, they're sending miners down in the mines with cans of cooked limestone, otherwise known as calcium carbide. Why? Because they've got carbide lights, and they're a simple affair. They look like this. It's a two-parter, right? Okay, down here you're going to put your cooked limestone. That goes down underneath here. Up above, this is nothing more than a reservoir for water. You add your water up above. And then when you're ready with your limestone down here, and you put this together, when you set the drip, and this water now starts dripping on the limestone. The settling gas is building up. The pressure forces it up the spindle. Comes out the orifice out front here. You hit the striker just like on a cigarette lighter, and boom, you've got this bright light using cooked limestone and water, a settling gas, carbide light. It's that simple. In fact, for a period of time, they were even using a settling gas inside of theaters for stage lighting. That's where that term standing in the limelight came from, because back then, yeah, see, they all knew it was, yeah, it was a light made from limestone, limelight. That's kind of a big moment in my presentation. I was hoping for a little bigger one. I'm trying to get you money's worth here, folks, and working hard. So anyway, there's a problem back in those days, though, before they could automate lighthouses. Turns out that you try to store large quantities of acetylene gas in metal containers. If you're not careful, you get a little temperature increase. These things are blowing up violently. People are getting killed. It's a real problem. But along comes that famous inventor we all learned about in high school, that famous Swedish inventor we learned about, Niels Gustav Dalen. Right, nobody's ever heard of him.
He looks familiar.
Does he look familiar? That's good Catholic voice. No, so anyway, he figures out a way to store large quantities of acetylene gas in metal containers so they're never going to blow up again. He solved the problem. That's the first step in the real prize he's after. He wants to develop a gas valve that you can put out in a remote location like this, and that valve sits there. And when the sun goes down and the air temperature drops a little bit, the valve opens up and allows the acetylene gas to flow to the little pilot light that's always on. In the morning, when the sun rises and we get the temperature increase, that's when the valve needs to shut down to conserve the fuel supply till the next night. He starts experimenting with shiny metal rods and shiny dark metal rods. Pretty soon, he's got a valve. It's working so well that after he patents it in 1906, governments all along the coastlines of Europe, they're using his valve to automate lighthouses out in those remote locations. If you don't think this was a big deal, they thought it was such a big deal back then. They gave the man the Nobel Prize for inventing this valve in 1912. Yeah, and 4.5 years later, one of his valves is out here on Charity Island. These guys are all sent packing. And then I scrolled down to see what else I needed to know about this guy. And I can't believe what I'm reading. It's 30 days before the Nobel ceremony. His wife has got to be so proud. He's got kids. He's 48 years old. He's going to get international recognition for his hard work and his genius for inventing this valve. What a big deal that is. In 30 days before, he's going to be recognized for bringing a reliable light source to these dark, dangerous coastlines. There's an explosion in the lab. The man is permanently blinded for the rest of his life at age 48 years old. Yeah, let me see here. Yeah. Here he is, some year after the explosion. Just what an irony. This guy, brings us a safe way to light these coastlines, and now he's blinded for the rest of his life. But his hard work and his genius reached all the way across Europe and the Atlantic Ocean and affected the men that were working out here in a very profound way. And that's how this thing became automated in 1917, and it's a few years after that the federal government says, well, we don't need 300 acres. All we're using is the tower. We're not even using that house we sunk all that money into. So they put the island up for sale. Now, back in those days, commercial fishing was big business out here, but you had to own land on the bay to have fishing rights. In the case of Charity Island, there's a company over in Bayport, the Gillingham Fish Company. They've been leasing the fishing rights from the federal government. And they hear that the government's just put most of the island right up for sale. Everything except for the tip with the tower. And he decides, well, he's got a bid on it. He built those fish. Turns out he built the fishing hut so those people got to stay in the night the economy wrecked off here. He submits a bid for $7,000. Over the next few months, he's hearing rumors that the fishing company that owned Little Charity Island had 2 buildings over there. They're bidding on the island as well. In fact, if they outbid this man, he'll be out of the fishing business. He doesn't want that to happen. It's starting to worry him. He didn't bid enough. He can't sleep at night. He decides to go back down. He resubmits the bid for $20,250, and he becomes the new owner of all of Big Charity Island except for the tower. And that's how it went from being state-owned to being a federally owned, and now it's a privately owned island. I always wonder how the man felt when he learned that his $7,000 bid was the high bid. Yeah. I wouldn't have even told my wife. No, she'll never let me forget it if I. But we all make mistakes, and that was one of his. And so now he owns the island. That was the important thing. And now we can jump forward to 1937. There's a decision made to just do away with this tower completely. Instead of messing around with the tanks of acetylene, we're going to just run a electric cable 3.5 miles off Point Lookout, and they build a lighthouse right out there in the middle of the bay. It looks like a church steeple. For some of you, there's some bushes in the way, but for those, you can see that church steeple out there. They get that turned on in 1939, and that's the year they turned off this tower, and it's been out of service ever since. Jump forward to the 60s. Gillingham sell it to a group of investors, and those investors don't do anything with the island. They bought all of it from the Gillinghams except for the tower. And it's when they own this island, they learned that the federal government has put this tower up for sale, and they bid $5,000 for it. And they learn about a year later that somebody bid $15,000 for that 3 acres with the tower. But now even that tower is privately owned. The man that bought it, his name was Jerome O'Rourke. He was a state senator back in the 60s out of Flint, Michigan. But now even the tower is privately owned. Then you move forward to the 80s. 1989, a realtor out of Arnett County. Some say he had more time on his hands than good sense. Made an offer to buy this island, subject to getting permits. And that would have been yours truly here. And I thought, if I bought this island, if I get the permits, I could sell 12 lots over here and 12 lots over there. I thought that if there's a boat basin out here, those lots would be worth $100,000 a piece. Times 24, that's $2.4 million, and that's kind of the prize I was after. And I was young, and I got permission from my wife to make the offer to buy the island, and she said okay. And
Bob.
Yeah.
And that's when I moved to Florida.
Yeah, my dad couldn't take the step.
So how much did you pay for it? Yeah.
$600,000.
Wow.
Made $600,000. I spent about $400,000 in the basin. I had about $1 million in it. I had a lot of buyers lined up after the 3 years. Like I said, I had to hire botanists, biologists, entomologists, serpentologists. Found out we got colonies of a very rare plant over here. I found out I had 3 bald eagles' nests. But the biggest thing was I got a letter from the state of Michigan one day. It said, Mr. Wilsey, we have come across the letter in our archives. An archaeologist has been out to Charity Island in the 60s, found evidence of extensive stone tool manufacturing and flint quarrying on Charity Island. Based on this letter, our only advice to you, if you wish to proceed, is you're going to have to hire your own team of archaeologists, go out and do a Phase 1 and Phase 2 archaeological survey of Big Charity Island. And it said, afterwards, be prepared to discuss how you may have to modify your project in order to mitigate any damage you might be doing to what might be an important Michigan cultural resource. After I figured out what they were talking about, I hired a team of archaeologists and I brought them out here. Boy, did I get an education. Turns out this knob of limestone we've been talking about is full of flint. And I thought it's pretty amazing that the flint comes in almost perfectly round rock shapes from the size of, well, some of them were golf ball size, grapefruit size. You break them open, there's the flint on the inside. And the beauty of it was for Native Americans is, once they got out here, they did not have to quarry the flint out of the limestone. Mother Nature had been doing it for 10,000 years. See, when the wave action pounds on this northeast side of the island, it erodes the soft limestone. And it frees up these harder mineral deposits called flint nodules or chert nodules. So all the Americans have to do when they get out here is wade out in the ankle-deep water, and they can pick up all these round rocks that they can carry. And because it was so important to them, and because it was so easy to get at, they were occupying this island, it turns out, for almost 2,000 years before the first Europeans arrived. I worked through all the issues, made some agreements with the state, I got the permits. I bought a barge and a tugboat, and I balled out the equipment out here, and I rented the drills from the quarries, and I drilled 22 feet in the bedrock, and I brought out 60,000 pounds of explosives, and I built that harbor out there in 16 weeks. And now I realize with everything I got out here, the last thing I'm thinking I should be doing is doing a real estate project. I got endangered plants, an archaeological site. I got maritime history out here. Maybe this island should just stay the way it is, and this island should be about becoming an economic asset for communities like Caseville and Au Gres, because people come to the community to get on a boat, come out and take a ride and visit an island. I'm thinking that's a better use for this island than real estate project, but I got a problem. I raised about $1.5 million, about $1.2 million, and my investors are expecting me to pay them back, and I was going to do that by selling the lots, and now I don't want to sell the lots, and I did a lousy job picking my parents when I was born. I can't go to my dad for $1 million. He doesn't have it. I didn't do a bad job, really. I thought I picked a pretty good set of parents when I got born. Just kidding, Dad. So anyway, I offer most of the island to the state, so I can pay the investors off. We'll leave the island the way it is, and now it's free for people to come out and visit. They said they're not interested. A few months later, though, the federal government called me up and said, Mr. Wilson, we understand you'd like to see the island left the way it is. We would too. We want to have a meeting. We're thinking we want to turn it into a wildlife sanctuary. If that's not offensive, come down and talk to us. So I went down there, and they explained that where the endangered plants are, there's a rare bird that likes the nest there. And those bald eagles were still on the endangered list. And for these reasons, they felt this island was a priority. They wanted to buy it and make it a wildlife refuge. I said, great, let's get the paperwork going, get the checkbooks out. I got people that want to get their money back. They said, well, we don't have any money right now. I said, well, that makes two of us, mister, because I spent all money out there, and that's the problem. I spent a lot of other people's money. They got to get paid. What are we going to do about that? He said, well, listen, if you need to sell lots, I see you got them planted over on this side of the island. There's nothing critical over there as far as wildlife habitat. Just, we need a commitment from you. You won't sell any lots on this side of the island for a year. And I gave him that year, and then I gave him 2. I had to give him 3.5 years, and finally they came up with the money. I sold them most of the island. I had to sell some lots over here to keep my investors happy. Kind of throw money at them so that they'd continue to go along with me while I waited to see what the feds would do. And they came up with the money. I paid my investors off, and I kept the 5 acres with the lighthouse and the marina so that I could start doing this someday. But I kind of put it on the back burners, and when I sold most of it to the feds in '97, I went back to my real estate business. It was still a good business to be in, 3 Century 21 offices. But 2003, somebody wants to buy me out. I sold my company. My wife said, now go out and rebuild the lightkeeper's house. We'll rent it out. And when we aren't renting it out, it'll be an investment we can go use. And I got it finished a year later. And I called her up and I said, boy, it's a beautiful home. Before we worry about renting it, we've got the time now. Let's go use it. We had a close family member pass away unexpectedly. I said, you know, life's too short and uncertain. Let's take the time we got. We sent out there that summer when I got the house finished, watching the season go by that summer and watching the ships and freighters off in the distance and the sunsets and the storms move across, and we'd sit on the porch and have dinner. And after a couple of months of feeling like the 2 luckiest people in the world, I said, Karen, I'm thinking now's the time to start bringing people out here. We serve dinner on this porch. It's amazing. I think that people have a great time, and I'm thinking that way, you know, never have to go get the real job again thing. And she gave me permission, and that's how we started that. And we've been at it now 11 years. And the tower, the man that owned that tower, he passed away. The feds didn't want it, so the Nature Conservancy bought it. They contacted me and said, we'd like to buy some of those lots up you sold to those people. And they bought some of them back, and that's why you saw the sign on the trail. And now they want to deed me the 3 acres with the tower, and I'm going to give up this part of my 5 acres that's got endangered plants on it. And the great news about that is now we can start working to get the tower restored. We're going to put it in the hands of a nonprofit group, and we'll finally start seeing some serious work done to get it restored. And that's basically how that all goes together. Best part of the whole story, of course, is besides that it's almost over, is the fact that you guys made it out here today. Makes you part of the history of Charity Island. I'm delighted you're here, because that's what we've been about, getting people up to this area. Thank you so much for coming. And I know if I don't get you fed right away now soon, you're going to all start turning on me, so I want to get the cooks going. Yes, ma'am, you had one quick question there?
I just have to say you've done an amazing job, the most amazing thing.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
That's right, that.